The locker room fell dead silent the moment Emily's cheer uniform ripped apart, a sound sharp as a gunshot. The girls with their phones out thought this was just another prank, another humiliation. They didn't realize they'd just lit a fuse. By the end of the day, one would be carried out with a dislocated shoulder. Another would be exposed for secrets she never wanted leaked. And Emily? She'd stand over them all, blood on her knuckles, whispering, "You wanted to break me? You should have tried harder." But something will happen next in the story that you would have never imagined. From which country are you enjoying this story? Make sure to tell us in the comments, and subscribe now, because the revenge is only just beginning. The sound was sharp, sudden, and unmistakable, the rip of fabric tearing apart. It cut through the noise of the locker room, silencing the chatter, the laughter, the clanging of lockers. For a moment, everything froze. The girls who had been giggling just seconds ago now stood still, their phones half raised, their smiles fading into something uncertain. The ones who had been pretending not to watch now couldn't look away. And in the center of it all stood Emily Carson, her breath caught in her throat, her fingers instinctively clutching at the ruined remains of her cheer uniform. The sleeves were torn, the seams split, the fabric hanging loose where it had once been snug against her body. The number on her back, the one she had sewn on herself the night before, just to make sure it was perfect, was now nothing more than a jagged scrap of cloth. The laughter started again, but this time it was different. Less spontaneous, more forced. Like they were trying to convince themselves that this was still funny. Danica West, the girl who had started it all, leaned against the lockers with that same smirk she always wore. The one that said she knew exactly what she was doing and didn't care. Her best friend, Lacey, was still holding the other half of Emily's uniform, the fabric dangling from her fingers like some kind of trophy. Emily didn't move. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just stood there, staring at them. And then, very slowly, she let go of the torn uniform. It wasn't supposed to be like this. 6 months ago, she had been hopeful. A new school, a new town, a fresh start. Her dad's military transfers had always meant leaving before she could really settle in, but this time, she had let herself believe it might be different. She had tried out for the cheer squad not because she needed to be popular, but because she wanted to belong somewhere. But from the first day, Danica had made sure she knew she didn't. The comments had been small at first, little jabs about her form, her timing, the way she held her arms when she jumped. Then they got louder. Then they turned into whispers in the hallways, into fake invitations to parties she was never meant to attend, into the kind of quiet cruelty that made the other girls look away instead of stepping in. And now this. The uniform had been the last straw. Emily had known something was wrong the second she opened her locker. Her real uniform, the one she had carefully hung up after practice, was gone. In its place was a cheap imitation, the fabric thin and scratchy, the colors slightly off, the number 00 scrawled across the back in black marker. She had known it was a setup. She had known they were watching. She had put it on anyway. Because part of her had still hoped, stupidly, that if she just played along, if she just didn't react, they would eventually get bored. But they hadn't. And now here she was, standing in the middle of the locker room with half her uniform ripped away, her skin prickling under the stares of girls who had never once been on her side. Lacey took a step forward, still grinning, her fingers twitching like she was thinking about going for another tug. That was when something inside Emily snapped. Not in the way they expected. Not in the hysterical tears or the frantic scrambling to cover herself. No, it was quieter than that. Deeper. She had spent every summer since she was 10 training with her dad in Krav Maga. Hours in dusty gyms, learning how to move, how to react, how to turn someone else's momentum against them. Never start a fight, her dad had always said. Asterisk. But you damn well better finish it. Asterisk. Lacey reached for her again. Emily's hand shot out, fast. Faster than any of them had ever seen her move before. Her fingers closed around Lacey's wrist. Twisted. Pulled. The next thing anyone knew, Lacey was airborne. She hit the locker room door with a crash so loud it echoed off the tiles. The door shuddered, the hinges groaning, and for one impossible second, it looked like it might actually break. Silence. Absolute. Dead silence. Danica's smirk was gone. Emily took a slow step forward, her hands loose at her sides, her voice low and steady. Who's next? Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. And in that moment, Everything changed. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Emily stepped out of the locker room, the torn fabric of her uniform fluttering slightly with each movement. The hallway air felt different now, charged, like the moment between lightning and thunder. She could feel dozens of eyes tracking her progress down the corridor, their owners pretending not to stare while drinking in every detail of her disheveled appearance. Near the water fountain, a group of junior boys stopped mid-conversation. One of them, a lanky basketball player named Jason, actually took a step back when she passed. Emily kept her gaze straight ahead, but she noticed how the usual catcalls and whispered comments that normally followed any cheerleader in uniform were conspicuously absent today. The whispers started like dry leaves scattering before a storm. Heard she threw Lacey Carter clean across. Danica's crew messed with the wrong. Never seen anyone stand up to. Emily's knuckles ached. She flexed her fingers absently, remembering the satisfying resistance of Lacey's wrist before the momentum took over. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Control isn't about holding back, it's about knowing exactly how much to give. The principal's office loomed at the end of the hallway, its frosted glass window glowing like a beacon. Mrs. Langley, the school secretary, looked up from her computer as Emily entered. The older woman's eyes widened slightly at Emily's appearance, but her professional demeanor barely flickered. "Principal Hayes is expecting you," she said, reaching for the intercom. "Emily Carson is here, sir." The pause that followed stretched just a beat too long before the tinny voice responded. "Send her in." The office smelled of lemon disinfectant and old paperwork. Principal Hayes sat behind his massive oak desk, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Vice Principal Dorsey leaned against a filing cabinet, arms crossed. Both men wore identical expressions of weary expectation. "Miss Carson," Hayes began, then stopped as he took in her torn uniform. His eyebrows climbed toward his receding hairline. "Perhaps you should... that is..." He gestured vaguely at a Ravenswood High hoodie hanging on the back of the door. "Would you like to?" Emily shook her head. "I'd prefer to leave it as is." "For context," Dorsey snorted, then quickly covered it with a cough. Hayes shot him a look before continuing. "We've received some concerning reports about an incident in the girls' locker room." "Which incident would that be, sir?" Emily kept her voice carefully neutral. "The one where 4 senior cheerleaders destroyed my property and attempted to humiliate me? Or the part where I defended myself?" Hayes's lips thinned. "We have multiple witnesses stating you physically assaulted Lacey Carter." Emily reached into her backpack and pulled out the remains of her uniform. The fabric whispered against the polished wood as she spread it across his desk. The number 17, her mother's old number from college, hung by a few threads. "This cost $287, she said quietly. "Custom fitted. Required for all squad members. Danica West took mine from my locker and replaced it with this." She produced the cheap imitation, the fabric already pilling at the seams. Then she and her friends recorded themselves tearing it off me. A muscle twitched in Hayes's jaw. "That doesn't justify violence, Miss Carson." "No," Emily agreed. "But it does explain it." She leaned forward slightly. "Would you like to see the video?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Dorsey straightened up from his slouch. Hayes's fingers tightened around his pen. "There's a video?" Emily smiled without humor. "Oh, I'm sure there were several." Mia Chen's phone was out before the first thread snapped. She sat back. "I wonder why none of those have been mentioned in these reports you're getting." The silence stretched. Somewhere in the building, a locker slammed. The clock above Hayes's desk ticked off 5 full seconds before Dorsey cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should speak to Miss West and her friends before jumping to conclusions." Hayes shot him another look, but nodded. "You're dismissed for now, Miss Carson." "But this isn't over." Emily stood, leaving the ruined uniform on his desk like evidence at a trial. "No, sir," she agreed quietly. "I don't believe it is." The walk back through the school was different this time. Where before there had been shock and whispers, now Emily noticed something new in the faces that turned her way: calculation. The freshmen who always got shoved into lockers watched her with something like hope. The drama kids whispered behind their scripts. Even Mr. Kowalski, the perpetually exhausted history teacher, gave her a considering look as she passed his open classroom door. The cafeteria was in full lunchtime roar when Emily entered. A hush fell over the nearest tables as she approached the checkout line. Then, like a stone dropped in water, the silence rippled outward until half the room had quieted. At the center table, the one by the windows that had always been cheerleader territory, Danica sat like a queen holding court. From 20 feet away, Emily saw the exact moment Danica noticed the change in the room's atmosphere. Her perfectly glossed lips parted slightly. Her manicured fingers tightened around her bottled water. Emily walked right past her. She collected her lunch, chicken sandwich, apple, chocolate milk, and turned toward her usual solitary table in the back corner. Then she stopped, because sitting at that table, in her usual spot, was someone entirely unexpected. Noah Wilkins, Ravenswood star quarterback and Danica's on-again off-again boyfriend, leaned back in the plastic chair and gave her a slow once-over. His gaze lingered on the torn uniform before returning to her face. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then he pushed out the chair opposite him with his foot. The cafeteria exploded in sound. Emily ignored it all. The gasps, the sudden flurry of phone cameras, Danica's outraged, "Noah!" and sat down. Noah took a bite of his sandwich. "So," he said around a mouthful of turkey club, "you threw Lacey into a door." Emily peeled the plastic wrap from her sandwich. "She hit it pretty hard, yeah." Noah's lips twitched. "Danica's pissed." "Danica started it." He studied her for another long moment, then nodded as if coming to some private conclusion. "You know her dad's on the school board, right?" Emily took a bite of chicken. "I do now." Noah leaned forward, his voice dropping. "She's going to come at you harder after this. It's not just about cheerleading anymore." Emily met his gaze evenly. "I know." Something like respect flickered in Noah's eyes. He opened his mouth to say something else when a shadow fell across their table. Danica stood there, her cheer squad arrayed behind her like backup singers. Up close, Emily could see the fine cracks in her composure, the two bright eyes, the tremor in her jeweled fingers. "Noah," Danica said, her voice sweet poison. "We have practice in 10 minutes." Noah took another deliberate bite of his sandwich. "I'll be there." Danica's smile tightened. "Now would be better." Emily watched as Noah considered this, then slowly wiped his hands on a napkin. As he stood, he leaned down slightly. "Watch your back, Carson," he murmured, too quiet for anyone else to hear. Then louder, "See you at practice, babe." Danica's triumphant look lasted exactly until Noah was out of earshot. Then she turned on Emily, her blue eyes glacial. "You think you're clever," she hissed, "but you have no idea what you've started." Emily took a sip of chocolate milk. "I think I do." Danica's nostrils flared. She opened her mouth, then seemed to think better of whatever threat she'd been about to make. With one last scathing look at Emily's torn uniform, she spun on her heel and marched away, her squad scrambling to follow. Emily exhaled slowly, her fingers tightening around her milk carton. The first battle might be over, but the war was just beginning. And as she glanced around the cafeteria, taking in the dozens of curious, calculating, or outright hostile faces, one thought crystallized with perfect clarity. Things were about to get much worse before they got better. The final bell rang, but Emily didn't move. She sat at her usual back corner table, now empty except for her, tracing the edge of her notebook where the spiral wire had come loose. The cafeteria had cleared out quickly, everyone rushing to practice, to clubs, to the parking lot where freedom waited. But Emily stayed, because she knew what was coming, and she wasn't going to hide. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the first strike. The door to the cafeteria creaked open. Emily didn't look up. She already knew who it was. Footsteps echoed across the linoleum. Slow, deliberate, more than one person. Then the scrape of a chair being pulled out. Danica sat across from her, flanked by Lacey and two other girls Emily recognized from the squad. Lacey's wrist was wrapped in a brace, the white strap stark against her skin. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Danica leaned forward, her manicured nails tapping against the table. "You've got some nerve, Carson." Emily closed her notebook. "Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you." Lacey's face twisted. "You broke my wrist." Emily glanced at the brace. "You ripped my uniform." Oh, please. Danica rolled her eyes. Like that's even comparable. Emily met her gaze. It is to me. Silence. Danica's smile was razor thin. You don't get it, do you? This isn't some military base where Daddy can bail you out. This is Ravenswood. And here. She leaned in. I make the rules. Emily didn't blink. Then it's a good thing I don't follow yours. Danica's nostrils flared. For a second, Emily thought she might actually lunge across the table. But then, the door banged open again. You are. Noah stood in the doorway, his football jersey damp with sweat, his expression unreadable. Behind him, half the team loomed like a wall of muscle and restless energy. Danica's posture shifted instantly. Shoulders back, chin up, the perfect picture of control. Practice over already? Noah ignored her. His eyes locked onto Emily. You okay? The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Emily nodded. Yeah. Noah studied her for a beat longer, then jerked his head toward the door. Come on. Coach wants to talk to you. Danica stiffened. What? Why? Noah finally looked at her. Not your business, West. The tension in the room spiked. Emily stood, slinging her backpack over one shoulder. She didn't miss the way Danica's fists clenched, or the way Lacey's eyes darted between them like she was waiting for an explosion. But nothing happened. Emily walked out with Noah and the team at her back, the weight of Danica's glare burning between her shoulder blades. Hashtag the offer. The football field was empty except for Coach Reynolds, a grizzled man in his 50s with a voice like gravel and a stare that could peel paint. He took one look at Emily and grunted. So you're the one who sent Carter flying? Emily didn't deny it. Yes, sir. Coach crossed his arms. You any good? Emily blinked. At? Fighting, he said bluntly. Self-defense. Whatever you want to call it. Noah shifted beside her, but stayed quiet. Emily hesitated. I've trained. Coach's gaze sharpened. How long? 6 years. A pause. Then, tryouts for the wrestling team are next week. Coach tossed her a flyer. Be there. Emily caught it automatically, her brain struggling to catch up. I what? Noah smirked. Coach didn't. You heard me. You've got the build for it. And God knows we need someone who can actually hold their own. He gave her a once-over. Assuming you're not scared. Emily's spine straightened. I'm not. Coach nodded, satisfied. Good. Then get out of here. And Carson. He turned away. Try not to break any more cheerleaders before then. Noah was grinning as they walked back to the parking lot. Well, that went better than expected. Emily stared at the flyer in her hands, still processing. Why would he want me on the team? Noah shrugged. Because you're good. He paused. And because he hates Danica's dad. Emily snorted. Noah's smile faded slightly. For what it's worth, you should know what you're walking into. Danica's not going to let this go. Emily folded the flyer carefully. I know. Noah studied her for a long moment. Then quietly, you need backup? The offer surprised her. Why would you help me? Noah's expression was unreadable. Let's just say I've been waiting for someone to stand up to her for a long time. Emily considered that. Considered him. Then she nodded. Okay. Noah grinned again. All easy confidence. Cool. Then welcome to the war, Carson. Hashtag the calm before the storm. Emily's phone buzzed as she reached her car. A text from an unknown number. You really shouldn't have done that. Emily stared at it. Then, slowly, she typed back. Who is this? The reply came instantly. Doesn't matter. Just know, you're not walking away from this. ***. Emily's fingers tightened around her phone. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. Because whoever was on the other end of that text was right about one thing. This wasn't over. Not even close. The text burned in Emily's pocket all the way home. She didn't recognize the number. No name, no context. just a threat wrapped in vague anonymity. Her fingers hovered over the screen, debating whether to reply, to demand answers. But something stopped her. Whoever sent this wants a reaction. So she wouldn't give them one. Instead, she shoved her phone into her backpack and focused on the road ahead. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the pavement, turning the quiet suburban streets into a patchwork of gold and darkness. Her house, a modest two-story with peeling white paint and a perpetually half-dead lawn, sat at the end of a cul-de-sac. Military housing had never been glamorous, but at least it had been consistent. This place still didn't feel like home. The second she stepped inside, she knew something was wrong. The TV was off. No sound of her dad puttering around in the kitchen. No radio humming from the garage where he usually tinkered with his old motorcycle. Just silence. Emily's shoulders tensed. Then, Emily! Her father's voice came from the living room, low and controlled in a way that immediately set off alarm bells. She knew that tone. It was the one he used when he was trying not to sound angry. She rounded the corner and found him sitting on the couch, still in his work uniform, his posture rigid. On the coffee table in front of him lay a single sheet of paper. Emily didn't need to read it to know what it was. "Principal Hayes called," her dad said. His voice was calm. Too calm. Emily swallowed. "I can explain." Her father exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his close-cropped hair. "You threw a girl into a door. She was." "I know exactly what she was doing," he interrupted, his voice sharpening for the first time. "But that's not the point." Emily clenched her jaw. "Then what is?" Her father stood abruptly, pacing to the window before turning back. "The point is, Emily, you reacted. You let them get to you. And now," he gestured to the paper, "now you're suspended for 3 days." Emily's stomach dropped. "What?" "Danica West's father is on the school board," her dad continued, his voice tight. "They're calling it unprovoked assault." "That's bullshit!" The words burst out before she could stop them. Her father didn't reprimand her for the language, just looked at her with an expression that was equal parts frustration and pride. "Yeah," he agreed quietly. "It is." Silence settled between them. Emily's hands curled into fists at her sides. "So what am I supposed to do? Just let them win?" Her father's mouth twitched. "No. You're supposed to be smarter." He picked up the suspension notice and tore it cleanly in half. "First rule of combat, Emily. Never fight on your enemy's terms. ####, the lines are drawn." By Monday morning, the entire school knew. Emily's suspension was supposed to be a punishment, a humiliation. But as she walked through the front gates, because of course her dad had told her to go to school anyway, she realized something unexpected. People were looking at her differently. Not with pity. Not with scorn. With respect. A freshman she'd never spoken to held the door open for her. A group of band kids nodded as she passed. Even Mr. Kowalski gave her an approving glance from behind his coffee cup. Danica's attempt to break her had backfired. And judging by the icy glare Danica shot her from across the courtyard, she knew it too. Noah appeared at Emily's locker, leaning against the adjacent one with his usual casual arrogance. "So," he drawled, "you're not suspended?" Emily shrugged. "Technically, I am." Noah grinned. "Rebel." Emily rolled her eyes, but couldn't quite suppress her own smirk. "What do you want, Wilkins?" Noah's expression sobered slightly. "Just a heads up. Danica's pissed. Like, next level pissed." Emily shoved her history book into her backpack. And, Noah continued, lowering his voice, "she's got friends in places you don't want to mess with." Emily paused. "Meaning?" Noah hesitated, then shook his head. "Just watch your back, okay?" Before Emily could respond, the warning bell rang. Noah pushed off the lockers with a lazy salute and sauntered away, leaving Emily with a growing sense of unease. ####, the trap. It happened during 5th period. Emily was halfway to the gym for wrestling tryouts, because screw Danica, she was going, when her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Check the east stairwell. Unless you're scared. ***. Emily's grip tightened on her phone. It was obviously a trap. She went anyway. The east stairwell was the oldest part of the school, dimly lit, rarely used, and completely deserted at this time of day. Emily's footsteps echoed against the concrete as she descended, her senses on high alert. Then she saw it, spray painted across the wall in jagged red letters. Emily Carson equals psycho bitch. Beneath it, her torn cheer uniform was pinned to the wall like some kind of trophy. Emily's blood went cold. A noise behind her, the scuff of a shoe against concrete. She turned just in time to see 3 figures step out of the shadows. Not Danica, not Lacey. Senior guys. Football players. Big ones. The one in front, Mitch Callaway, the team's starting linebacker, smirked as he cracked his knuckles. Well, well. Look who came running. Emily didn't back up. What do you want? Mitch's grin widened. Just delivering a message. He nodded to the graffiti. You don't belong here, military brat. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears, but her voice stayed steady. Message received. Now move. Mitch laughed. Or what? You gonna throw me into a door? The other 2 guys chuckled, fanning out to block the stairs. Emily exhaled slowly, centering herself. She could take them. Maybe. But that wasn't the point. Her father's words echoed in her head. Never fight on your enemy's terms. So she did the one thing they wouldn't expect. She smiled. Then she pulled out her phone and snapped a picture of the graffiti. Mitch's smirk faltered. What the hell are you doing? Emily tapped her screen a few times, then pocketed her phone. Documenting harassment. You know, for when I file that police report. Silence. The guys exchanged glances. Mitch's face darkened. You're bluffing. Emily shrugged. Try me. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Mitch spat on the ground near her feet. Whatever. This isn't over. Emily held his gaze. No, she agreed. It's not. They left, their bravado noticeably dimmed. Emily waited until their footsteps faded before letting out a shaky breath. Her hands trembled slightly as she examined the graffiti again. Danica's message was clear. This was war. And Emily was just getting started. The fluorescent lights of the principal's office buzzed like angry hornets as Emily sat across from Principal Hayes for the 2nd time that week. This time, though, she wasn't alone. Her father sat beside her, his military posture rigid, his expression unreadable. Across the desk, Principal Hayes looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. And leaning against the wall with his arms crossed? Danica's father. Mr. West was everything Emily had expected. Tall, silver-haired, with a suit that probably cost more than her dad's motorcycle. His smile was all polished charm, but his eyes were cold. So, Mr. West began, his voice smooth as expensive whiskey. It seems we have a situation. Emily's father didn't blink. Sure do. Your daughter's been harassing mine. Mr. West's smile tightened. That's quite an accusation. Emily slid her phone across the desk, the photo of the graffiti displayed clearly. Here's my evidence. Principal Hayes paled. Mr. West didn't even glance at it. Kids will be kids, he said dismissively. But physical violence? He shook his head. That's unacceptable. Emily's father leaned forward. So's destruction of property. And cyberbullying. And what do they call it now? Oh right, sexual harassment. His voice dropped. Unless you'd like me to take that police report I've already drafted straight to the station? Silence. Mr. West's jaw twitched. Principal Hayes looked like he might be sick. Emily bit the inside of her cheek to keep from smiling. Her dad wasn't just playing hardball. He was playing war. #### the unexpected ally. The hallway was eerily quiet after the meeting. Emily's dad had left for work with a final warning to stay smart, leaving her to navigate the rest of the school day alone. Or so she thought. Noah fell into step beside her at her locker, his usual smirk replaced by something more serious. Heard about the meeting. Emily shoved her books into her bag. News travels fast. Noah leaned against the adjacent locker. West looked pissed when he left. Good. Noah studied her for a long moment. Then, quietly, you know this isn't going to stop, right? He'll just get sneakier. Emily slammed her locker shut. I'm not scared of him. Noah's lips quirked. Never said you were. He hesitated, then pulled something from his pocket. A folded piece of paper. Here. Emily took it cautiously. What is it? Insurance. Noah's voice dropped. Danica's dad isn't as clean as he looks. That's proof. Emily unfolded the paper. It was a printout of an email chain. Dates, numbers, names she didn't recognize. But one phrase stood out. Asterisk, payment for services rendered. Asterisk. She looked up sharply. Where did you get this? Noah's expression darkened. Let's just say I've been collecting dirt on the Wests for a while. He met her gaze. Use it if you need to. Emily refolded the paper carefully. Why are you helping me? Noah's smile didn't reach his eyes. Because someone should. Then he was gone, disappearing into the crowded hallway before she could respond. Emily tucked the paper into her pocket, her mind racing. This changed everything. Hashtag the calm before the storm. For the rest of the week, the school held its breath. Danica and her crew were conspicuously absent from their usual haunts. The graffiti in the east stairwell had been painted over. Even Mitch and his football buddies kept their distance, though their glares followed Emily everywhere. It was eerie, like the quiet before an explosion. Emily knew better than to relax. She kept Noah's documents hidden in her room, memorized the contents, then burned the paper in her backyard fire pit, just in case. She threw herself into wrestling tryouts, earning a spot on the team through sheer stubbornness. Coach Reynolds didn't coddle her. If anything, he worked her harder than the guys. But she didn't complain. Every bruise was a badge of honor. Every drop of sweat was armor. Then, on Friday afternoon, the other shoe dropped. Hashtag the setup. Emily was halfway to her car when she heard the shouts. The parking lot was nearly empty, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the asphalt. At first, she thought it was just more football players messing around. Then she recognized the voice. Noah. She sprinted toward the commotion, rounding the corner of the gym just in time to see Mitch slam Noah against a dumpster. Say it again, pretty boy, Mitch snarled, his fist clenched in Noah's jersey. Noah's lip was bleeding, but he was grinning. Gladly. Danica's dad is a crook, and everyone knows it. Mitch reared back to throw another punch. Emily moved without thinking. 1 second, Mitch was towering over Noah. The next, he was on the ground, clutching his knee and howling. Emily stood between them, her breathing steady, her stance wide. Walk away, Mitch. Mitch's face twisted with rage. You're dead, Carson. Then a new voice cut through the chaos. Asterisk enough. Asterisk. Principal Hayes stood at the gym entrance, his face thunderous. Behind him, Coach Reynolds looked equally furious. And standing off to the side, phone in hand, was Danica. Smiling. Emily's stomach dropped. This hadn't been a random fight. It had been a trap. And she'd walked right into it. The fluorescent lights of the principal's office hummed louder than usual. Or maybe that was just the blood rushing in Emily's ears. She sat stiffly in the same chair as before, but this time, the air was thicker, charged with something final. Across from her, Principal Hayes rubbed his temples like he was fighting off a migraine. Coach Reynolds leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Noah sat beside Emily, his split lips still oozing a little blood, but his posture relaxed, as if he didn't have a care in the world. And then there was Danica. Perched delicately on the edge of her seat, she dabbed at fake tears with a tissue, her phone clutched in her other hand like a weapon. I told you she was violent, Danica sniffed, directing her words at Principal Hayes, but her gaze locked onto Emily. First Lacey, now poor Mitch? When is enough enough? Emily's fingers curled into her palms. You set this up. Danica's eyes widened in faux shock. Me? I didn't make you attack someone. Noah snorted. Yeah, because Mitch was totally just standing there when she showed up. Principal Hayes held up a hand. Enough. Miss West, you're dismissed. Danica's mouth fell open. Asterisk what? Asterisk but. Now, Hayes said, in a tone that brooked no argument. With one last poisonous glare at Emily, Danica stood and flounced out, the door slamming behind her. Silence settled over the room. Then Coach Reynolds spoke. Mitch is suspended. 2 weeks. Emily blinked. What? Coach's lips twitched. Turns out, we've got security cameras in that corner of the lot. Who knew? Noah grinned, then winced as his lips split again. Principal Hayes sighed. That doesn't change the fact that you did attack him, Miss Carson. Emily opened her mouth to argue. But, Hayes continued, given the circumstances, I'm inclined to call it self-defense. He leveled a look at her. Asterisk this time. Asterisk. Emily exhaled slowly. Understood. Noah nudged her foot with his. A silent we won. But as they left the office, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Danica wouldn't let it be. #### the last move. The school buzzed with the news the next day. Mitch Calloway, suspended. Danica West, humiliated. Emily Carson, somehow still standing. Whispers followed her everywhere. Asterisk, did you hear? She took down Mitch with one hit. Asterisk, West family's freaking out. Never seen anyone stand up to them like that. Even teachers looked at her differently. Less like a troublemaker, more like someone who'd earned their quiet respect. But Emily didn't relax. Because Danica hadn't made a move yet. And that was dangerous. She found Noah at his locker before practice. We need to end this. Noah raised an eyebrow. Got a plan? Emily nodded. Yeah. And you're not gonna like it. ### the confrontation. They cornered Danica after cheer practice. Alone, for once. No Lacey, no squad, just Danica and her designer backpack, walking toward the parking lot like she owned the world. She froze when she saw them. What do you want? Emily didn't smile. To talk. Danica's gaze flicked to Noah, then back. I have nothing to say to you. Good, Emily said. Then you can listen. She pulled out her phone and played the recording, the one Noah had risked everything to get. Danica's voice, clear as day. Asterisk, just make sure it looks like he started it. Daddy will handle the rest. Asterisk. Danica's face went bone white. That's fake. Noah shook his head. Nope. And guess what? We've got copies. Lots of them. Emily stepped closer. Here's how this ends. You leave me alone. You leave Noah alone. And you tell your dad to back off. Or, she held up her phone. Asterisk everyone asterisk gets to hear this. Danica's chest heaved. For a second, Emily thought she might actually lunge at her. Then, like a puppet with its strings cut, Danica deflated. You'll regret this, she whispered. Emily pocketed her phone. Doubt it. Danica turned on her heel and stormed off, her perfect hair whipping behind her like a battle flag in retreat. Noah let out a low whistle. Damn. Carson. Remind me never to piss you off. Emily finally smiled. Too late for that. ### the aftermath. The rest of the semester passed in a blur. Danica avoided Emily like the plague. Lacey transferred schools. Mitch came back from suspension quieter, less prone to posturing. Emily threw herself into wrestling, surprising everyone, including herself, by making varsity by mid-season. Coach Reynolds stopped calling her Carson and started calling her Trouble. She took it as a compliment. Noah, against all odds, became something like a friend. They trained together, ate lunch together, and, when Danica wasn't looking, exchanged knowing smirks across crowded hallways. And her dad? He hung her torn cheer uniform in the garage, right above his workbench. Reminder, he said when she asked why. Of what, he didn't specify. But Emily knew. A reminder of where she'd been. And how far she'd come. ### epilogue. 1 year later. The sun was setting over Ravenswood High's graduation ceremony, painting the football field in gold and pink. Emily adjusted her cap as she scanned the crowd, spotting her dad near the front, his camera raised. Noah bumped her shoulder. Still can't believe we survived. Emily smirked. Speak for yourself. I thrived. Noah laughed, then sobered. Seriously though, you okay? Emily looked out at the sea of faces. Friends, enemies, everyone in between. At Danica, sitting stiffly a few rows ahead. Her perfect life not quite as perfect anymore. "Yeah," Emily said. "I'm good." And for the first time since she'd stepped foot in Ravenswood, she meant it.